Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to Big Frog's 4x4. Today we're going to be putting an upper ball joint in a Chevy 1500 2001. I've already started to pull the lug nuts and caps and stuff off because pretty much if you're watching this video you already know how to get that far. If not, watch one of my other videos. Now when checking the ball joints and any independent front suspension, you do not want to put the jack on the frame. You want to put the jack on the bottom of the A-arm down here and jack it up, and that takes all the load from the torsion bar off of the ball joints and stuff. I've already done that, and I know that there's play in the top wheel bearing back and forth, so I know that's the one that's bad. Now the owner doesn't have the money to do upper and lower, so we're just going to do the upper. It's a T55 Torx bit. So make sure the set you buy has a T55 in it. Alright, once you have your caliper bolts out, make sure they're clean or at least have fresh grease on them. The grease in this is getting thick and it'll probably start gumming up and sticking soon, so we'll put some fresh grease on them when we put them back in. And the brakes, you should be able to just kind of wobble the caliper back and forth. And pull it off and just lay it up out of the road for right now. Alright, you're going to need to remove the ABS wire, and I find it easier to actually kind of push the little tabs in on here and pop this whole wire snap out. Then you'll need to remove this nut for your brake caliper. That way this whole assembly can pull away so you can press your ball joint out. To remove the bolt on top of the knuckle here is a 10mm nut. And I'd put that nut right back in that hole. That way you don't have to worry about losing that little bolt. And if you're working in a dirty environment or something, it's probably not a bad idea to slide your pins back in their holes as well, just to keep them clean. Alright, now you got to remove the nut that's on the bottom of this joint, and you have to remove the cotter pin that's underneath. So you want to bend the prongs of the cotter pin straight. Sometimes they can be a real bear to get out. Sometimes you might have to cut them, or they'll break because they'll be rusted in there. And don't worry about that too much because you're going to be replacing this whole ball joint anyways. And please, put a new cotter pin in. They're not that expensive. You can buy like a whole cotter pin kit at Harbor Freight, Tractor Supply, or anywhere. A whole kit for like 10 bucks. Just get a new cotter pin, buy a whole set, you'll use them, trust me. This is an 18 millimeter. I think it's an actual standard size. 18 millimeter feels big, but it's taken off just fine. Don't strip around anything off. If you don't have the right size, then go back to your toolbox and get the right size. But this one broke free easily. I'm sorry, unfortunately I forgot to hit the record button, but someone had caked this and coated this and replaced it last time and covered it in anti-seize. So I only smacked the edge of the knuckle right here gently with the hammer and it popped apart. So you didn't miss anything extravagant. Normally, if they're seized in there or somebody over tightened them or whatever, you need to put a pry bar underneath here, pry up, and smack it real hard a few times right here, and the jarring will knock it loose. Or you can get it what they call a pickle fork. They slides in there, it has a Y in it. You smack that and that'll knock them loose. Or they make ones that are pneumatic for an air hammer. I actually have one of those, but I forgot it at work, so I'm glad this came apart easy. Now all you have to do is press it out. Alright, I have my cheap reinforced Harbor Freight ball joint press on here. And we're going to start cranking, and I like it whenever I can get an impact gun on the top of it, but there's no room up above it, so we're going to do it the old hard-fashioned way. Alright, this ball joint's really fighting to come out. I ended up getting a 3/4 inch drive breaker bar with a pipe on the end. And I'm cranking on it. So somebody anti-seized the taper, but I guess they didn't anti-seize anything else. Alright, it's getting easier now. There it is. Yeah, they definitely put an anti-seize on there. They had it all over down here. Alright, the new one, you will press down in. You'll be careful with that boot if you have to. On some models, you might have to take that rubber boot off so you don't rip it when you're putting it in. I'm going to put some anti-seize on this one. Okay, you might have to put a pry bar in here and keep this clamp from spinning one way or the other in case it's not going straight. It's almost all the way seated. Plus, this gives your hand something to push against when you're pulling. There it is. I do not recommend these Harbor Freight bowl joint presses though. They are extremely weak. First time I ever went to use the thing, it bent. That's why I put it back in a press. I pressed it straight again and then welded those gussets on. Alright, next you put your snap ring on. Now, not everyone has a set of snap ring pliers. So I'm going to put this on without them. Make sure you get it up over your boot carefully. You want to put a hole in that boot. Well, that snap ring would knock over top of that boot and I was too afraid of ripping it. You can gently use flathead screwdriver and maybe a pick or a small Phillips screwdriver and kind of work it up over, but I have snap ring pliers, so I might as well use them. I don't feel like buying the customer a new ball joint just because the boot ripped. There it is. That one wanted to fight to get on. Okay. Lift this arm up, drop the joint back down into place. That's a good reason to have a jack stand underneath your frame. You never want to let a vehicle ever on a jack without having a jack stand, because if that jack would decide to let go, it's coming down on you. But also, if you only have one jack, it frees up it to put underneath here and jack this up. Try not to get in front of the camera, but I'm not left-handed. Sometimes it's just hard to screw things on with your right hand. There's a slot in the castle nut that your cotter pin goes through, and there's a hole in your ball joint. So when you screw the new one on, you just line up the slot in here with that hole, and then you put your new cotter pin through. Unfortunately, the battery died while I was filming that. I had to charge it up just enough to get this ending. Everything I showed you, everything's just in reverse. You put everything back together. Once your ball joint's out, you press a new one in, put your grease zerk on, put your snap ring on, make sure your cotter pin's in, the tongues are bent over around the castle nut, then put everything back together. Torque the lug nuts to 140 foot-pounds per nut. Make sure you're doing a cross pattern. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe to the channel. As always, God bless.